I can't believe this anymore. Adrienne Andrews, the team captain of the school's soccer team, said. He had just heard that the soccer program was cancelled, and he immediately knew who was responsible. Tell me about it, Jeff Daniels, a longtime friend and fellow soccer player, replied. He was always by Adrienne's side. Ever since Angela showed up, it's been one setback after another. Angela had recently become the principal's assistant. Since her arrival at the all-boys boarding school, the students noticed a sharp decline in their free time and extracurricular activities. She can't be the one calling all the shots, Mike Peters, another close friend, said. Normally cheerful and relaxed, Mike seemed just as upset today. I don't know, whenever an activity is cancelled or we have to go back to the dorms earlier, it's always her announcing it, said Penn Walters, the smallest player on the team. Quiet and shy, Penn had always been nervous around authority figures. She almost seems pleased about it. So what? Mike snapped. The principal has to approve all this, and so do our parents. They're paying for us to be here. The four friends came from wealthy families, most of whose parents ran major corporations. They were the heirs to businesses just like many other students at the exclusive school. But what can we do? Penn asked, his voice filled with doubt. If we break the rules, we could get in trouble. Adrienne let out a deep sigh. Listen, you're going to be in charge of a big company one day. You need to start standing up for yourself, or people will walk all over you. Yeah. Jeff agreed. Are you really going to let some woman boss you around? I don't know, guys. Penn stammered. Maybe we should just. Come on, be a man. Adrienne urged. If we get all the other students on our side, we can probably convince Gary to reverse this. Gary, the principal, was friendly enough with the students that they could call him by his first name. Penn hesitated but finally gave in. All right, I'll come with you. He wasn't always quick to jump in, but the other boys had a way of pushing him along. Lead the way, Adrienne, Jeff said, eager to join in. I'm sure everyone will come. Adrienne had always been a natural leader, and the others admired him for it. Soon enough, they had gathered the rest of the students. It didn't take long to get everyone on board with the idea. Together, they marched to the principal's office, only to find a locked door with a note that read, "You can find me in the gymnasium, Angela." When they reached the gym, they were surprised to find no teachers or security guards around. But then, they spotted Angela, standing alone on the balcony high above the gym floor. There was no way to reach her from the ground level. To access the area, they would need to take a separate hallway. School meetings were usually held in this location, with the principal overseeing everything, but today, Angela was the only one there. A short wall blocked their view, so they could only see her from the waist up. She had long hair and a pale complexion, almost white. She wore a fitted red and black dress, matching her lipstick and hair, and around her neck, a pendant with a glowing stone, the same one she wore every day. Her smile widened as she saw all 40 students gathered before her. Seems like you didn't take the cancellation of the soccer program too well, she said, her voice dripping with arrogance. Stop it! Adrienne yelled. Ever since you got here, things have gone downhill. We're fed up with it. You cancelled soccer even though we had a good team. What's your problem? Jeff added. I came here to play, and now you're telling me I can't. Angela's smile grew eerie. Trust me, soon enough, you won't even miss soccer, she said cryptically, as if she knew something they didn't. Mike stepped forward. I think we should send you to a psychiatric hospital, he mocked. Angela looked back at him, unimpressed. You're all the same, she snapped. You think just because your parents own everything, you can do whatever you want. Well, big changes are coming, and you'll learn to like them. Her words were filled with an ominous tone. This isn't fair. You can't just. Penn stammered, his fear giving way to frustration. For once, he felt the need to stand up for himself, even if he was still trembling. Fine, go ahead with your changes. We don't care. Adrienne shouted, his anger now boiling over. He started walking toward the balcony, his resolve hardened. As you wish, Angela said, waving her hand casually. At that moment, every door in the gymnasium slammed shut, locking itself. The group of boys stood there, stunned. I don't know how you did that, Adrienne said, his voice filled with disbelief. But you don't scare me. I'm going up there. His anger surged, and he moved forward, determined to confront her. How typical, Angela laughed. You think you're all tough, don't you? Well, I don't buy it. We'll see about that. Adrienne shouted back. He took another step toward the wall, his friends cheering him on. I think not, she said coldly, raising her hand. Stop right there. Suddenly, Adrienne froze in his tracks. His body wouldn't respond. He couldn't understand why. What's going on? Why, can't I move? He gritted through his teeth, trying to force himself free. The other students watched in stunned silence. Was Angela really controlling him somehow? It's simple. You think you're so defiant, and I'm showing you that deep down, you are not. You are in fact, much more obedient. Adrienne's eyes went wide. In fact, she continued, you aren't as brave and strong and manly as you think. I can see right through you, and all I see is a little girl. Before everyone could comprehend what she meant, Adrienne unfroze and started crying out in pain, clutching his sides. His friends and classmates could only watch in horror as his tall frame began to shrink, his hair growing longer and longer as his voice became higher and higher. And you aren't alone, she said. She waved at the entire group, all of you are nothing but precious little girls. With her wave pain spread forth to Jeff, Mike, Penn and all the other boys. They fell to their knees, clutching hold of their rapidly shrinking bodies as they started to transform. Muscles dwindled. Manes grew long. Voices raised to squeaky high ranges. They then grabbed between their legs as they felt their genitals inverting, changing their internal organs along to match. Everyone was becoming younger, going backwards from adolescence to little over 8 years old in physique. When the pain finally subsided, the transformed boys all stood up, looking first at themselves in bewilderment and then each other in panic. Where once there stood many teenage boys were now nothing but little girls. Not one had been spared. Somehow, their clothes they wore had shrunk along with them, their now smaller shirts, pants, shoes and underwear fit their new little bodies perfectly. The 4 friends could recognize themselves, barely, behind their cute new faces. Many students grasped at their new long hair. Others looked inside their pants and teared up as they experienced a new sensation of emptiness. Some even cried out for their mommy, making others cringe. It was near impossible to process what had just happened. She had transformed every boy in the school into a little girl. How was this even possible? Angela laughed. She thoroughly enjoyed stripping the students of their boyhoods, completely changing their bodies to what they would have been had they been born female. Not finished, she had yet another surprise waiting. All right, girls, she said, barely containing her glee. I'll leave it to your principal to tell you all about your new school. She signaled to someone in waiting concealed by the walkway entrance. The former boy saw a beautiful older woman walk in, clutching a clipboard to her ample bosom. She looked like a housewife straight out of the 1950s. She was immaculately coiffed and tastefully made up. She wore dangling earrings matching the 3-tiered pearl necklace around the high collar of her full-skirted dress. The sounds of her footsteps made it clear she was wearing high heels. The former boys were aghast as they saw her face. It didn't take long to connect the dots. That woman was Gary, their principal, changed head to toe from balding middle-aged man to femininity personified. In a soft, melodious voice she addressed the panicky students on the lower floor. Good afternoon, everyone. It is I, Madam Margaret, your principal. It is wonderful to see you all assembled here in our school gymnasium. I am certain you must have some questions in light of the changes made to our curriculum this year. Stop, shrieked the now tiny female version of Adrienne. This isn't right. He pointed at Angela, who was now standing behind Madame Margaret. That bitch transformed us or something. Transformed you. You have to. Goodness gracious. Mind your language, young miss. This is no way for a lady to talk. Now refer to me politely as madam, and be on your best behavior. But Adrienne tried to speak, but nothing was coming out. He looked at Angela, who was waving her hands once more. She was stopping him from speaking. Everyone looked at each other in fear. None of them were able to speak their objections. They couldn't even move or try to escape. She had taken their ability to rebel away from them. They could only watch and listen attentively to their transformed principal. Much better, Madame Margaret continued, pleased with their silence. Now, as you all know, your parents have sent you here to learn how to become proper young ladies. You will learn how a lady is to dress and conduct herself in an ideal society. Our femininity-focused curriculum will provide you with everything you need to know in order to live a purely feminine lifestyle. Our new teaching staff will guide you over the course of the next 10 years, until your graduation at our grand ball. The former boys couldn't believe their ears. They were now enrolled in a school which would teach them nothing but girly things. Did she say 10 years? They can't be forced to grow up as young girls. This couldn't be happening. They tried with all their might to protest, except they couldn't. They could only stand and listen as Madame Margaret continued to describe the school program and the new rules. Classes had changed. While subjects such as English and math remained, others were brand new: cooking and cleaning, feminine etiquette and fashion, sewing and knitting, even ballet. Their schedules had changed as well: an earlier time for lights out, and a later time for morning classes to allow the students to prepare and ready themselves for the day. Breaks between classes were now recess periods, where games were much suited for little girls and expected to be played. Madame Margaret's definition of a feminine education was frightfully extreme. There was nothing gender-neutral, let alone masculine, to be found anywhere in the curriculum. It was dreadfully clear that soccer would soon be a memory. After what seemed like an eternity, the new principal then began taking to read a new set of rules for student appearance and behavior. Angela licked her lips. She was looking forward to the show. First, let us talk about your hair. Make sure it is always neat and presentable. It is necessary for it to be styled in a proper feminine fashion. Remember, a lady knows how to take care of her hair. Madame Margaret began fluffing her immaculate hairdo for emphasis. Angela mockingly did the same, taunting the students, and then absent-mindedly waved her hand. The boys watched in silent shock as their hair began to shift and move, as if animated by some unseen force. Some of them noticed their hair curling and twisting, transforming into new, more feminine shapes. Adrienne felt cute bangs sweep across his forehead while a black headband materialized to hold his now longer blonde hair back. The ends flipped upwards, just short of his shoulders, forming a classic, stylish flip. Jeff's hair parted into two sections, which then tied themselves into sweet pigtails, complete with pink ribbons. Mike's hair transitioned into a charming pageboy style, a barrette attaching itself on the side with a cute red bow. Pen's hair shot up and gathered at the top of his head, forming a neat bun secured by small hairpins. A soft white ribbon appeared, wrapping itself around the bun, adding an extra touch of elegance to the updo. The four friends were mesmerized by the changes happening around them. Adrienne noticed one of his classmates' hair being gathered into a high ponytail, adorned with a ribbon that swayed gently. Jeff watched in awe as another student's hair cascaded down in beautiful curls, with butterfly-shaped hair clips appearing. Mike observed a classmate's hair transforming into a playful bob, and Penn stared as the student in front of him had their hair twisted into a long French braid, tied with a yellow bow at the end. By the end, every student in the gymnasium now sported a delicate, feminine hairstyle. Strangely, the boys found they couldn't touch their new hair, as if their arms were frozen. Not only had they lost their boyhood looks, but now they had hairstyles fit for girls. They exchanged glances, each of them feeling the weight of the changes, but they were only just beginning. Madame Margaret acted as though nothing unusual had occurred, continuing with her instructions. Now, remember the dress code, ensure you're wearing the correct footwear. When walking through the halls, keep an elegant pace. No running. Remember, a lady always watches her step. The boys were suddenly frozen in place. Panic set in as they realized they couldn't even move their feet. They watched, helpless, as their shoelaces untied themselves and vanished, replaced by a buckle strap. Their shoes were morphing before their eyes. The material turned to shiny leather, and the soles became firmer, with the heels slightly elevated. The colors shifted as well, some shoes turned black, others white, and Jeff's even changed to a soft pink. He glanced at Pen, who whimpered as his sneakers sprouted little bows on the front. When the boys were finally able to move their feet again, the sound of their new Mary Janes echoed on the wooden floor as they walked. Before they could even comprehend what had just occurred, the boys felt their socks shifting around their feet. They watched in disbelief as their socks changed shape inside their new shoes. Adrienne and Mike felt theirs grow softer, stretching up their legs and covering them entirely. They merged under their pants, transforming into soft, white tights. Many of the other boys experienced similar changes. Jeff, Pen, and the rest saw theirs grow frilly around the edges, turning into delicate, ruffled socks. By the end of it, everyone in the gymnasium stood in feminine footwear. Angela reveled in the moment, savoring every second. She couldn't wait for the next part. Madame Margaret continued, "Now girls, remember, when I say this school has a dress code, I really mean a dress code." Angela laughed and waved her hands theatrically at the students. The boys exchanged looks. Their hairstyles had changed, their shoes were transformed, and now, this? They felt their shirts ripple as the fabric softened. Adrienne saw his shirt turn blue, and the back of it split open. The opening quickly sealed as buttons appeared and fastened themselves from bottom to top. The sleeves puffed up, and lace adorned the cuffs, spreading to form a delicate Peter Pan collar. Jeff's shirt shifted in a similar way, turning pink with a pattern of tiny hearts woven into the fabric. Mike's shirt turned deep red, with white polka dots popping up all over it. He tugged at the new puffy sleeves as ribbons tied themselves into bows at the cuffs. Pen's shirt became pure white, decorated with beautiful flower embroidery. His collar transformed into lace and crept up his neck. The other boys watched as their shirts underwent similar changes, button backs, puffy sleeves, and pretty patterns had become the norm. They could hardly bear to think of what might happen next. "Let me make this clear, ladies," Madame Margaret said, holding up one side of her dress for emphasis. "The dress code forbids the wearing of trousers. Only gentlemen can wear them, and they," she stressed, "do not attend this school." The boys immediately looked down at their legs. It was happening. Their pants began to rise higher over their waists, and the front zippers vanished. The fabric shifted, matching the color and texture of their new shirts, and the pretty patterns spread down. Helplessly, they watched as their pants shortened until they stopped at their knees. The inseams split open, and the pant legs began merging together. As the change completed, many of them saw lace trim appear on the hems. Their pants had become skirts. The shirts and skirts fused together into a single piece. The waistbands vanished, and their belts turned into soft, colorful satin. The front buckles disappeared, replaced by large bows at the backs, forming delicate sashes. Where once they had worn shirts and pants, they now stood in beautiful dresses, the ultimate feminine attire. The feeling of their new lower garments swishing against their legs was foreign. The soft fabric brushing against them felt completely different. Many of the students struggled to hold back tears, humiliated by the frilly clothing they now wore. But the transformation wasn't over yet. Madame Margaret still wasn't done. "Remember, girls, your dresses announce your femininity to the world," Madame Margaret instructed. "Make sure they are as presentable as possible. The dress code also requires that you wear the appropriate undergarments." She lifted her skirts slightly to reveal layers of soft fabric beneath. The boys shuddered as soft, lacy camisoles appeared under their dresses, covering their upper bodies and tickling their now softer skin. They felt their masculine boxers and briefs shift into something softer. Their cheeks flushed red as they realized their last trace of boyish clothing had turned into delicate, frilly girl panties. Angela couldn't help but laugh as she watched the transformation complete. The skirts of the boys began to billow out, as layers of lacy petticoats appeared underneath. From her vantage point, it looked like a garden blooming. 40 enchanting dresses had taken shape, their wearers now complete with matching shoes and beautifully styled hair. The former boys examined their new attire, touching their dresses and discovering the accessories that had appeared. Adrienne now wore a frilly white pinafore over his blue dress. Jeff had a heart-shaped pendant hanging from his neck. Mike wore a string of small pearls, and Penn even had little white gloves to match his dress. They saw other students around them discovering their accessories too. Adrienne noticed one student with a pretty butterfly brooch matching the pattern of his violet dress. Jeff saw another student with dangling earrings and a forest green dress. Mike watched as others found pretty necklaces and bracelets. Penn looked at the student with the long French braid, who even had a small purse hanging from the shoulder of his yellow dress. "Now, ladies," Madame Margaret announced, clapping her hands to get the attention of her newly transformed students. The panicked chatter stopped immediately. "I've explained the rules, and as part of this new program, you will now reintroduce yourselves to your classmates properly. I have the student list right here." She held up her clipboard. "To begin, I want you to line up in neat rows. A lady knows her place." The students immediately stopped talking and began walking, as if the magic was guiding them. Their hands instinctively clasped in front of their skirts, moving in sync with the enchantment. The boys felt an overwhelming mix of sensations as they moved, the swish of their skirts against their legs, the bounce of their delicate hairstyles, the tickle of their new, soft underwear, and the strange emptiness between their legs. They had no control over their actions, feeling small and powerless. Everything seemed larger now, and they had never felt so weak. Once they were all in place, they stood in silence, exchanging glances, waiting for whatever was to come next. "Thank you, ladies," Madame Margaret said, pleased with her students. "I will now call each of you by your last name. You will come to the front and introduce yourself in a ladylike manner." The former boys froze. They would have to introduce themselves as girls. The humiliation was unbearable. Adrienne knew he would be first, and he dreaded it. He wanted to do something, anything, to confront Angela. But he felt trapped, unable to act, his frustration mounting. "Miss Andrews, please come to the front and introduce yourself." Adrienne flinched at hearing the feminine form of his name. He looked up and saw Angela wink cruelly at him, waving her hand to force him forward. His classmates watched in silence as he walked. The sound of his cute shoes clicking and his dress rustling filled the room. Adrienne, the one who had led them here, now stood powerless before their collective humiliation. When he reached the front and turned to face the others, he felt their eyes on him, judging every detail of his transformation: black Mary Janes, soft white tights, a full blue dress with a frilly pinafore, and a delicate, girlish hairstyle framing his terrified face. His anger had melted into embarrassment and fear. He wanted to disappear, to end this nightmare. The magic forced him to speak. "Hi, I'm Ala, my name is Al." "Al." He paused, his eyes glazing over. He closed them for a moment and then reopened them, blinking. The look of terror faded, replaced by something else. The students held their breath, watching as Adrienne, now fully transformed, smiled softly. He took a dainty step forward and spoke with new confidence. "Hello everyone. My name is Abigail. It's lovely to meet you all." The room went silent. Madame Margaret was pleased, marking a pink check next to the name Abigail Jessica Andrews. Adrienne, now Abigail, felt a heavy weight in his chest as he delicately lifted both sides of his skirt, placed his right foot behind his left, and curtsied sweetly. As she bent her knees, she raised her skirt just enough to reveal her petticoats. Her girlish display complete, Madame Margaret thanked her and told her to return to her place. Abigail smiled and waved to her now horrified friends as she walked back. When she reached her spot, she spun around, causing her skirt to swirl. She giggled and covered her mouth with one hand, her transformation complete in body and soul. Angela smiled to herself, pleased. Her magic had turned the once arrogant leader into a sweet, innocent girl. Now it was time for the rest of Adrienne's friends to embrace their new feminine selves. One by one, Madame Margaret called the remaining boys to the front, where their minds were magically reshaped into soft, obedient girls. After each transformation, the new girls introduced themselves with gentle curtsies. Brett became Brittany, Timothy became Tiffany, and Jim became Jane. The giggles in the gymnasium grew louder as more of the boys became girls in both body and mind. When Samuel became Samantha, it was Jeff's turn. He stood at the front, looking out at the now smiling faces of the new girls and the fearful looks of the remaining boys. He touched the pigtails in his hair and noticed his nails were painted the same pink shade as his heart-patterned dress. His full skirt swished as he pushed it aside to see his pink Mary Janes. The fabric rustled back into place when he let go. It hit him, he would never wear pants again. The realization was overwhelming. He struggled to hold back the tears, knowing his days as a soccer player were over. Then, everything changed. After presenting herself, Jennifer performed an adorable curtsy, briefly revealing the embroidered hearts on her petticoats. She then happily swished back to her place, thinking of her upcoming ballet class. Madame Margaret smiled and marked a pink check next to Jennifer Sophia Daniels. Willow became Wendy, and then it was Mike's turn. He stood trembling in his red polka-dotted dress, gently touching the small pearls around his neck. Looking down, he noticed his wide skirt trimmed with white ribbons tied into bows, matching the cuffs of his puffy sleeves. He saw Abigail and Jennifer smiling at him, their faces full of anticipation. This is it, he thought, a feeling of dread washing over him. I'm going to be a girl. At least I'll still have my friends. His last lingering thoughts of masculinity faded as he closed his eyes. The magic went to work, erasing the last traces of his boyishness. Moments later, he opened his eyes again, ready to introduce himself, sweetly curtsying as Molly. She skipped happily back to her place as Madame Margaret marked a check next to the name Molly Julia Peters. Penn stood frozen, watching his friends embrace their new identities as girls. He was next, and there were only a few boys left. After Dorian became Dorothy, it was finally his turn. The girls gasped as he lifted his skirted dress with gloved hands to walk to the front. His white silk dress, adorned with delicate flower embroidery and a high lacy collar, flowed down to his feet. His puffed sleeves and satin sash with a larger bow added to his feminine display. White Mary Janes with little bows at the front carried him forward. His beautiful, feminine updo highlighted his flower-shaped earrings, and a hint of makeup completed the look. He was a picture of innocence. As he walked to the front, Jennifer and Molly beamed at him, impressed by how pretty he looked. Abigail spoke to him along the way, "You have the most beautiful dress. And I love your hair. You look like a princess." Angela listened with pleasure, hearing these compliments from someone who had once been so resistant to the change. Penn almost replied, but caught himself, realizing how far he had come from his old self. Madame Margaret also praised him when he reached the front. Penn had fought hard to resist the walk to the front, but the magic had been too strong. He turned to face the others, settling his skirt to barely cover his dainty shoes. He couldn't believe how easily his friends had transformed into sweet little girls, while he felt so betrayed by his own weakness. Yet here he was, looking even prettier than they did. He wanted to fight back, to stop it all, but something deep within him resisted. What Penn didn't realize was that Angela's magic had already tapped into something hidden inside him, his jealousy of his sisters, watching them wear pretty dresses, play with dolls, and host tea parties. His boyish pride had kept these feelings buried, but now the magic was amplifying them, transforming him into the prettiest of them all. As the magic surged through him, it shattered every masculine defense he had. His blue became pink, soccer turned into ballet, video games into tea parties, and his pants and shirts became lovely dresses. He was completely and utterly transformed. The new girl's eyelashes fluttered as she opened her eyes, smiling as she looked up at Madame Margaret. "Madame Margaret, thank you so much for welcoming us into your wonderful school," she said in the sweetest voice. She then spun around, making her dress flow outward beautifully, to the awe of her classmates. She took both sides of her skirt, holding it delicately in her gloved hands, ready to embrace her new identity. "My name is Penelope, and I hope we can all be friends forever." With a perfect curtsy, she finished, and every girl in the gymnasium clapped joyously. Madame Margaret marked a check next to the name Penelope Diana Walters. Angela was pleased with the outcome. Her magic had completely changed the school, transforming it from an all-boys boarding school into a finishing school for young ladies. Every boy had been turned into a sweet, obedient, and feminine girl. After her work was done, Angela turned to Madame Margaret, admiring her. The new principal was a picture of loveliness, the perfect person to run this new school. Angela thanked her for the opportunity and said her goodbyes. As she walked to the exit, she saw the teachers and staff, all embracing their new womanhood, dressed in beautiful dresses. Angela admired their transformation before laughing to herself, realizing she almost felt jealous of her own handiwork. Stepping outside, Angela saw the soccer field had disappeared, replaced by a playful park. The bell rang, signaling recess, and the doors opened as the girls skipped outside, some holding dolls, others setting up for jump rope. There were no balls to be seen. Many girls ran to the park, smoothing their skirts as they sat on the swings. Angela smiled as she watched two girls on a park bench, exchanging tips and giggling while one braided the other's hair. It was a perfect scene, and every girl seemed happy as they played together, spinning in circles to make their dresses fly up. Angela's heart swelled with pride as she saw Abigail, Jennifer, Molly, and Penelope hand in hand, skipping off to play hopscotch. It seemed so fitting that the four most rebellious boys had become the sweetest little girls. Before leaving, Angela decided to give her favorite students a parting gift. She waved her hand, and four adorable little girl hats appeared on their heads. Abigail's wide-brimmed hat had lace trim and a long blue ribbon. Jennifer's pink hat had a wavy brim with a large pink bow. Molly's hat had a polka-dotted ribbon tied in a bow at the back. Penelope's white lace-trimmed bonnet appeared, small decorative flowers adorning the top with a soft ribbon tied under her chin. The girls admired each other's hats, complimenting one another before happily skipping off to play. Angela smiled as she watched the scene unfold. Her mission was complete. She turned to leave, took out her phone, and dialed. A voice answered on the other end. "Is it done?" "Yes, I did what you asked. I enjoyed it, in fact." "Excellent. I'll inform my partners. Their sons will have ideal wives when the time comes. I trust they will meet expectations." "I'm sure they will. Your sons will quite literally wear the pants. It should be no trouble for them to take control of their wives' assets." "I'm happy to hear that. Our deal is complete. Before I go, I want to thank you again. If you hadn't, don't mention it. Just stay out of trouble. And Angela, thank you. Goodbye." Angela tucked her phone away, hearing the bell ring as recess ended. The girls lined up by their teachers, heading back inside. Angela promised herself she would attend the graduation ball, eager to see her girls all grown up in beautiful gowns, ready to dance with their future husbands. As she walked home, the light in her necklace dimmed.